Good evening, everybody. I'm Roy Firestone, and this is an up-close primetime retrospective. For most of his career, Wilt Chamberlain was the most dominating force in the history of basketball. For most of his career, he was the all-time leading scorer in the game. For all time, he is the most unforgettable force the game has ever known. Tonight, a retrospective on the late Wilt Chamberlain.
An extraordinary man in an ordinary world. Can you reflect on that for a few moments?
Well, I believe that the world is extraordinary, you know, and I'm really pretty ordinary. But it's how people view you, you know. One of the things that always bothered me was people always wondered, well, where do you sleep? How big is the bed that you sleep in? You know, it never bothered me. It was pretty easy just to curl up and go to sleep. But people view you in a certain way, and because you're a foot taller or so than the average guy, to them that foot sometimes is 5 or 6. An old lady once asked me how tall I was, and I said 6'11". I was in high school at the time, and she said I just lied to her like you couldn't believe. She said, you got to be 9 feet tall. Well, people see you as being something much more than what I see myself as being.
Mm-hmm. You are a loner. You don't do this much. Why?
Well, because I'm really very content with myself. I'm happy about what I'm about. I don't need people to lean on. I enjoy people. I love them. I love to interact. But basically, I like to reflect, and I have to do that by myself. I'm very happy being alone.
Mm-hmm. Alex Hannum once said, former coach of yours, it's now a famous phrase, nobody loves Goliath. Oh, Wilt Chamberlain, he was awed, he was admired, but he wasn't really loved. You agree with that?
Well, to a certain extent, yes. In most cases, I do. But I understand that more now at the age of 50 than I did probably at the age of 20. And one thing is that, I mean, it's hard to relate. It's hard for you, Roy, a mere 6-footer, to relate to, you know, a giant. You know, I mean, it's easy to want to be a Jerry West, you understand, or want to be, you know, someone a little bit more your own size. But it's hard to fathom what it's like to be 7 foot and ducking through doorways and saying, hey, you know, one day I'm going to be like that, you know, because it's just hard to be that way.
What were you like as a little kid?
As a little kid, I was a very ambitious, hard-working little kid. From the time I was like 4 years old, I always thought there was a great need to go out and work and to make money. I was goal-oriented even at that particular age.
Did you take on any of the people would imagine the abuse for being so tall? I don't know how tall you were in 6th grade. So.
Absolutely. In fact,
I mean, how bad was it?
It was really very, very bad. It was actually embarrassing. If it wasn't for having such a close-knit family and a lot of friends, I don't know how I would have really, it was quite traumatic.
How much hurt took its toll to a point where you didn't want to be around people? And obviously a point came where you said, the hell with this, I don't want to be a distant person. Well, I want to be in the midst of people.
Well, let me tell you how really it was. In fact, I stayed away from playing basketball earlier on in life because basketball was regarded as a game that tall people played. And I didn't want to be considered just a tall person doing something. So I was heavy in track and field, went to play a little football, anything to stay away from basketball because, you know, and I was razzed as a young kid in 7th grade, hey man, you're so tall, you should play basketball. And I only did it to appease those people who were razzing me.
Some of the statistics about you as an athlete, an all-around athlete, people don't know this about you. Shot-putting champion, undefeated for long periods of time, bench press 500 pounds, a 50-inch vertical jump. By the way, what's Michael Jordan's vertical jump? Do we know?
I don't think it's quite that high.
Not as high.
No.
That people don't realize that they think, oh, it's all inherent in your height, and because of that, it should come easily to Wilt's.
Some of it was inherent, like that vertical jump you're talking about, but a great deal of it, I worked very hard. I mean, I taught myself how to throw a shot, and I did it all by myself.
You ran track, you ran distance.
I ran track and field and so forth.
Did you have a Kansas record, a Big 8 record for a long time?
Well, yeah, I've had quite a few different type of records, but what I am most proud of was that I was innovative, even as a young person. I started lifting weights to build my body up back in junior high school when I was told and people were believing that weights were bad for anything dealing with games, football, whatever, you know.
Right.
And now there isn't a program that doesn't have it.
You've always loved being big. I remember you told me once upon a time, you said, I'm glad as hell I'm 7 feet tall. I loved it.
God, I mean, can you imagine, I mean, you know, being, you know, shorter and getting on elevators and being around people's armpits and things like that? No, you're right. I enjoy what God gave me in a physical sense, and, you know, I'm just amazed sometimes at how people treat it.
I have never met an athlete, the magnitude of his, by the way, who is as easy with himself as Wilt Chamberlain. Why is it so easy for you to be Wilt? It may sound like a silly question, but it isn't so silly. A lot of guys aren't easy with themselves.
Yeah. Well, I think because so much focus had been on me for most of my life. Remember, I started in junior high school. It wasn't the thing to be black and skinny and 7 foot tall back.
I guess not.
You know, I mean, it just really wasn't. And I was bashful, I was shy, but I had that family and friends to fall back on. And as I've grown and to realize it really is God's gift to have a body my size and the ability to use the body and have an outlet for it, like the game of basketball. You know, I owe almost everything I have in a monetary way and a lot of other ways to the game of basketball. And as I said to you a little earlier, I am a private person, but I really love people.
When we return,
I'm prideful, not egotistical in what I'm about to say here. I was the interview in basketball at that particular time. They used me to help to be a vehicle to carry basketball around the world.
as Up Close Primetime continues.
Dandruff, scratching, itching. Introducing new Neutrogena T-Gel Stubborn Itch Control with cooling menthol you feel on contact. Unlike self-control, it works. Ask any dermatologist.
If you're ready to lose weight, muscle up, and get back into shape, I've got a free video you're gonna love.
Introducing a winning fitness strategy.
You gotta eat healthy, drink plenty of water, and most important,
This ESPN Classic.
Welcome back to our Up Close Primetime retrospective on the late Wilt Chamberlain. I'm Roy Firestone. We did several interviews with Wilt. He was always controversial, always unforgettable.
Were you a rotten guy as a player, honestly? Were you not a very nice guy?
I tell you what, I was a very nice guy.
You were?
Yeah, unfortunately, I was too nice. I have some close friends of mine who told me a number of times, Wilt, go up there and break Bill Russell's hand. You know, stop being so nice to these guys. You can destroy them. And because I was maybe a nice guy, I shot the fadeaway and didn't do some of the things that, like Shaquille O'Neal's now doing. So I was a nice guy.
Which we'll get to in a moment. But I give you one not-so-nice moment, or so they say. Bill Libby, who did one of the books that was written about you, one of the hundreds of books written about you, say you used to be in that locker room, Laker locker room, and you used to have an egg timer. Right? Now, I don't know if this is true. You'd turn over the egg timer, and it would be like 3 minutes, and say, y'all got 3 minutes, I'm timing you. Or you'd have it by your watch. This is as much time as you got, go. They asked the questions, even if you were in the middle of an answer and that 3 minutes were up, you were out of there. That's not so nice.
That's right. Okay, let me say something to you. You know who Paul Bunyan was?
Yes.
And the stories that, you know, right here?
Right.
Here you go. An egg timer. I couldn't afford an egg timer. What is an egg timer? I mean, I said,
You never timed the interviews by your watch?
Never in my life. In fact, I was the interview. I mean, you know, I'm prideful, not egotistical in what I'm about to say here. I was the interview in basketball at that particular time. They used me to help to be a vehicle to carry basketball around the world.
You were Jordan before Jordan. Yes?
Yeah, well, you know, I don't even like to say Jordan before Jordan because Jordan, you know, Jordan's come behind a whole lot of us as far as I'm concerned. But I was the guy who helped to bring basketball to China, to Russia, and to whatever. And interviews came to me all the time.
I want to know what happened when Sports Illustrated had to look back at 40 years of the most important people in sports, right? In all of those years. And nowhere on that list, nowhere on that list is Wilt Chamberlain. What happened? What could they have been thinking about?
You know, they put erasers on pencils because people make mistakes, you know. That was a huge mistake by Sports Illustrated.
Did it hurt?
You know what? I'll tell you something. Believe me, if you will. I never read it. All my friends like yourself have told me about it. I know that let me say this about SI. They've always never been a big Wilt Chamberlain, let's say, fan. When Wilt Chamberlain scored 100 points,
and the New York Knicks, I don't think SI gave me that much space. I wasn't on the cover the next
But no one
week.
was there that night. There was no video. There was no TV.
It was still done, though. It was still done.
Can you believe that one of the greatest feats, maybe the greatest feat in sports history, he scores 100 points in Hershey, Pennsylvania in one game. There's no camera there.
Yeah.
There's no video highlights.
But we're talking about SI addressing it, which does everything every week. You know, usually when you do something great, you make the cover the next week.
Were you as great as you were because of the time, or would you be as great now? I mean, there's 15 7-footers now. There were 3 in your era, or 2 in your era.
I disagree with you there, Roy. I think it was a lot of big guys when I played. Guys who weighed more than I did, a few guys taller than I was, a lot of 7-footers, but today the guys are much more athletic. But I think sometimes when you have all that going for you in your body, how is your head? I watch Kareem out there now. I think the center position has suffered. I think they have lousy centers right now. There are 2 or 3 who are any good. The rest of them couldn't make Overbrook High School.
And you still talk about Kareem as the guy that just doesn't do it for the rebounds. I don't know how much of that is needle. I don't know.
Well, some of it's needle, but he can still go out there and do it scoring-wise on these guys who, you know, should be killing him.
What did Kareem do better than you that you will acknowledge? Because he's going to see this now. What did he do that was better than you?
In the facets of the game, you mean, did he score better than I did? Did he rebound better than I did? Did he pass better than I did? Did he run better than I did? Did he, you know, hard for me to figure out. I mean, he shot a hook shot better than I did. I mean, for absolute sure. But, you know, Kareem was also, Roy, a different type of basketball player than I was. I would have also loved to have a chance to play against Kareem when I was scoring 50 points a game.
Would you, if you could have an idyllic situation, hypothetically, would you like to play some backyard one-on-one if you guys were both in your prime? Wouldn't that have been a great thing? How would it have been a backyard one-on-one?
I'm too strong for Kareem. And if you're going to go one-on-one, you take it to the basket. You can't forget, Roy, that basketball is a team concept game. And I said to you once before, and I'll say it to you again. Sometimes maybe my individual talents were a little too overpowering for a team concept. You understand?
That's good.
And maybe Kareem's wasn't.
The other guy that you're most associated with, and always have been, it's something you almost don't even want to talk about anymore, but I'm going to bring it up anyway, is Bill Russell. You guys were once upon a time very, very close, but all of that stuff, all that baggage added up, and it split you guys apart.
I would think that there is a little bit of a myth involved. We were very, very close at one time, and Russell had some statements to make after he got out of basketball that I think were somewhat unkind to me.
Like?
Like that when I came out of the game, which was the 7th game against Boston in L.A. with a knee problem. I tore apart my Achilles tendon, and he said at some type of a speech that he would have never left the game unless sort of a broken back, something like that, you know. But then he apologized a few years later on, but never to me, but through the press or what have you.
The truth is, you and Russell are really close these days. I mean, you're spending a lot of time because of a commercial you did a couple of years ago.
Right.
What's Russell like these days? What's your relationship?
Russell is one of the more, he's like so funny and he's so warm and so misunderstood, which he doesn't even care about, because he is his own man.
The media thinks he's an angry, and I'll use the word, they think he's a racist, a black racist. Now that's what a lot of the media thinks.
Well, first of all, if you came along in the period of time that Russ did, you know, and I did, you may have a lot of reasons to be angry.
I'm sure.
You understand?
But you were not as angry as he.
Well, you know, I'm different than he is, and he's dealing with it maybe in a different way.
He played in Boston, which was not one of the more open
right.
towns.
I didn't want to say that, you understand? But, you know, there's a lot of reasons why you might be whatever. It may be pretty tough if you are the backbone of a team and they vote for a guy named Bob Cousy to be the best basketball player of the 50 years. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why he may be feeling the way he is.
We'll come back with more after this.
Let's take a trip back to a time when memories and music were made to last. 1998, 2 CDs, $26.98 plus $4.95 shipping. Call now. This is ESPN Classic.
Welcome back to Up Close Primetime. I'm Roy Firestone. Our retrospective tonight with the late Wilt Chamberlain.
There is a lot of myth and legend associated with Wilt Chamberlain, as you might imagine, and sex. How much of that is true? Are you
100% of it.
super stud? I mean, what is that? Come on. I mean,
No, super stud is in one's imagination. I just want to be satisfying. The right ass, but satisfying. I want to be able to satisfy.
the perfect woman is, for you?
One who is intelligent, one who laughs a lot at herself and other people, one who enjoys a great deal of sex and can really cook.
I'm going to talk openly about
Yeah,
this.
sure.
When did sexual conquests become, well, they think I have to because I'm Wilt, therefore I must?
Yeah.
Did it become that?
Well, first of all, let's say one thing. It was never a conquest. It was a mutual consentment where, you know, our minds both wanted something and our bodies did it. Understand? But I never look upon it as a conquest. It was an enjoyment of a sexual encounter. I mean, many of these ladies are today's friends. And, you know, this is...
How many names could you remember, Wilt?
I could remember maybe 15,000. And all the names that I would see, I would remember them. I have...
No one-night stands in there?
No, well, we didn't say that. We didn't say that. Maybe even a 1 hour stand. I mean, one night stand, just a bit much one night.
Let me ask you this. This is probably going to people, oh, come on, get off this stuff. But I want to, because this is people's curiosity. This is the fantasy that a lot of people... What do you think it's like to be with Wilt for a night?
Well, you know, first of all, that's you know, something that I think people even want to talk to Wilt or whatever. But let me just clear one thing up. For me not to have mentioned, let's say, the number in my book would have been ludicrous.
Not to have
mentioned? Yeah, not to have mentioned would have been ludicrous. To be involved with maybe 20,000 or so ladies consumed as much of my time as my whole basketball career.
Right.
If I had left my basketball career out of the book, I might as well have left this number. I used the number only to explain to people just how involved I was. If I said I had a lot of ladies, what would that really mean? If I told you I scored a lot of points while I played basketball, it may be, you know, 15 points a game, 10 points a game. If I, you know, you got to give some numbers so that people understand what you're talking about. So
Data.
it wasn't,
We're talking about data.
Right, we wasn't talking about in a braggadocious manner. We just talking about it in a fact so people can understand what a lot is. Only thing that I ever really felt sad about was a great many people missed a lot of good stuff in that book because they only stuck with the one subject.
How many times have you been tested for AIDS?
Oh, a number of times, but that doesn't make anybody safe or feel safe.
Have you felt the threat of it every time? You're a single man, and
Yeah.
have, as we said, an appetite for this.
I
kind
don't
of
think that any single man who is partaking doesn't feel the threat. Understand?
You believe in abstinence? Would you think it has its place?
You know, I can believe in it. I don't know how long I can sustain it. You understand?
I'm probably more famous or infamous for that than the 100 points. What one was trying to do, though, is in using a figure of speech to bring attention to sexual situations that I was involved with without being really explicit, without calling names, and also leading to the latter part of that chapter. The chapter was Sex Rules the World. And I was trying to let people know that, yes, I was involved. And the last sentences of that chapter, I say that for all you men who think that having 1,000 different women is really cool, I have found out that having one woman 1,000 different times is really the way to go.
Do you feel you're a chauvinist? Do you feel you're even in this discussion is a bit sexist, all of it?
Well, it definitely is sexist. I don't feel I'm a chauvinist. I have 6 sisters, have a great deal of respect for women. I have enjoyed working with them in many aspects. I have been supportive of them in athletic endeavors.
If the truth be known, you have preferred to be around women more than men. I've seen you in the company of mostly women.
Absolutely, which have nothing to do with a sexual gratification. I just think that they've been shunned upon as many men of color and people my size, and whatever I can do to bring them certain recognition in areas, I try to.
And whatever you can do at other endeavors too, you try to as well.
When we return,
You are an ultra-conservative. You supported Nixon. You have come under attack for that. Certainly, you take none of that back. I mean, that's the way
I
you
would
choose.
definitely do it again. Definitely do it again.
Why?
Still, because I believe very strongly at the time that Nixon was the best for our country.
as Up Close Primetime continues.
At Burger King, we're... This is ESPN Classic.
Welcome back to Up Close Primetime. I'm Roy Firestone. Our retrospective tonight with the late Wilt Chamberlain.
Who are the most impressive people you've ever known in your life? specifically? Who are some of the most...
Joe Louis, Sugar Ray Robinson, because they were my heroes when I was a kid, and I got a chance to know them on a personal level as I grew up. Harry Belafonte, Richard Milhouse Nixon. Those are...
Well, give me specifically about Nixon. What's impressive about the man?
He had a great sense of knowing what to say and what needed to be done at the big time. And his foreign affair policy at that time, when the world was getting closer together, was second to none. But I always knew him as being a very humane and human person, that he never lost touch with simple things like he'd call a meeting, which I was involved in, and what he wanted to know in the meeting was, what do you think Michigan's going to do in the football game this weekend? Understand? So, but
Did you know Malcolm X?
I had the pleasure of knowing Malcolm X, but not very. He worked in a restaurant that I owned called Small's Parties back in New York.
How about Martin Luther King?
I worked with Martin Luther King, and he would be also one of the people that I feel very strong about. I had a chance to march with him and do a lot of different things with him, and he touched my life greatly. And Arthur Ashe, you know, I even got to respect him a lot more when his situation came to light and how he handled it. And you know, he was a pioneer in so many ways. You know, and as a man of color in America, a lot of people back at the time when he was a tennis player, the people of color didn't have any great respect for Arthur Ashe because they knew nothing about tennis. They thought it was a sport for white people, and he was trying to be white or whatever. You know,
Racial bitterness, you have very little, if any.
I have none, because I understand, I think, a lot of what racial, all that malarkey is all about. I've been lucky enough to see people come into love, and that's what it's all about.
One-liners again. What I'll never understand about life is
how people think that they can intrude upon your privacy at will just because they know your name.
What letting go of the mystique of Wilt Chamberlain meant in your life?
Well, letting go meant to open up and let people get inside of you and know more about you, so they can appreciate what you truly were and are.
Wilt is the Superman, Wilt is the mortal man. Who do you like more?
You know, I like me in both ways. I like being dominant and fast and strong, and you know.
Do you look back at that wistfully? Do you look back at that sadly in some ways? I'll never be what I was those days.
I sure do. Every time I'm out there playing tennis or paddle tennis, and some little person is kicking my butt, and I can't get to the ball. Yeah, whoa! I would love to be back where I could show some of that strength.
Fill this one in a short answer. Basketball is too easy now because. Basketball is too easy now. Because people are not really demanding an athlete to be a true athlete out there. They'll accept anything. 5 rebounds, you're great. 10 points, you're great. 5 assists, you're fantastic. What's the most money you ever made in a season?
$450,000 as a player, close to $1 million as a coach. I was a great coach.
What would you be worth in 1995?
Well, you know, I honestly, in 1995, they would have to probably, you know, say, Wilt, now, what part of the team do you want to own? You know, I'm just saying, you know.
Wait a minute.
This is not ego again. This is pride. I believe it.
Shaquille O'Neal has earned $100 million in and out of the sport. In and out of the sport, okay? His teams have never won a single playoff game. What do you say?
I say that he is a genius.
We'll come back with more after this.
I knew I was...
Is ESPN Classic.
The past is the mist. What's the general feeling of your past?
Well, I think the general feeling of my past is that, you know, they're not really sure about me, and that I really am very egocentric and a guy who is all into himself.
And?
The word ego, I think, is the wrong word. I'm prideful. So I like to use the word pride rather than ego. I'm happy with what I did and what I'm all about.
What would you like most to be associated with, remembered for the career, and for the myth and legend of Wilt Chamberlain?
Well, a big guy that had a lot of compassion. I want to be remembered for trying to give something back, from getting so much out of sports to just giving something back.
We hope you enjoyed our up-close primetime retrospective on the life and times of Wilt Chamberlain. The game had never seen a player like him before. They'll never see one like him again. Thanks for watching. Good night.
Up close.
is a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. Proud to be celebrating our 20th anniversary. For more, log on to ESPN.com, part of the Go Network, go.com.
Hi, I'm Bob Lee. The headlines were as big as the man himself. The news is unexpected as many of his accomplishments. Wilt Chamberlain died this past week. It was a sort of news that reached beyond sports and across the American landscape. He died at the age of 63. Why are so many of us so affected? Just pick up the NBA record book and have a reading from the book of Wilt. 4-time MVP, 7 straight scoring championships, 11-time the rebounding champ. But Wilt Chamberlain was much more than that. His very name was a metaphor for size and strength. And today, for the next 7 hours, ESPN Classic will remember Wilt Chamberlain, a giant legacy, beginning with Dick Schaap's one-on-one conversation. Then a real treat, Wilt against Bill Russell from the 1967 playoffs. Then a very special up-close Roy Firestone with Wilt. Then Vintage NBA hosted by Robin Roberts. An offering of classic sports legends and the 1972 NBA All-Star Game. And then coming up, I'll be joined by ESPN NBA analyst Fred Carter for his memories and thoughts on this remarkable game. We begin, though, the giant legacy with Dick Schaap.
Welcome to another edition of Schaap One-on-One. Up next, guest host Al Troutwig one-on-one with one of the most dominating centers in basketball history, Wilt Chamberlain.
A most special edition today because we have with us one of the most compelling athletes in our history. Wilt Chamberlain joins us. Wilt, welcome to Victory Yard. You have been in situations like we're going to have for the next half hour or so, countless times in your life. And I would guess that most times you walk away having heard all these questions, and you know everyone tries to be intelligent and ask Wilt the question of all time. But you must walk away so many times and say, they don't get it. They don't understand what I'm all about. So let's just start off with your definition of what you are truly all about. What makes you go?
Well, very, very competitive, but the competition that I seek is within. I'm always like pushing myself to do things, some of them rather stupidly, I may add, but I like to see just how far I can drive myself and what I can really make myself totally interested in. And once I decide to do something, I will not stop until I think I've done just about what I want to do in that thing. I think it's very natural for people to get confused about who I am and what I am and what I'm all about. I've always been painted as a villain, you know, and I love that. I love being a villain, and yet I really love people, so they don't understand that because I'm so imposing physically that a lot of people are somewhat afraid of me. I'm very, objective, and I'm very, very opinionated, and I have a big mouth, and I love to talk, and I love to put people on, so they don't know sometimes when I'm putting them on or whatever, however. And when I play games, everyone watches me closely because they accuse me of cheating. Not exactly to my face, but they always, because I win almost all the time, so they think I cheat all the time. And I love that because as long as they're looking for me to cheat, they're not concentrating on what they should be doing, so it gives me the edge all the time. I'm always looking for the edge.
Have you ever cheated?
Have I ever cheated? Yes.
When?
Well, at various times. Various times, But I mean, I have to.
On an NBA court?
Oh, an NBA court. Maybe one time I did cheat, and it's like a little strange cheat job. I was playing against Swede Holbrook, who's taller than I am. Understand? And Swede was not really one of the greatest basketball players in the world, so the game was almost over. We were up by about 30 points and so forth. And the cheat was I said to Swede, look, Swede, fake to the left and go to the right, and I'm going to let you go. Understand, you know, and so so Swede, unfortunately, he faked to the wrong way and went the wrong way. Understand, you know, but we managed to let him get the basket anyway, and I had about like 57 points. So he came down the other end of the court and he says to me, "Wilt, fake to the left and go to the right. I'm gonna let you get the basket." I said, "No, thank you, Swede."
People in their life, as they get a little bit older, when they're with people who they're close with, will frequently be in a situation where someone says, "Hey, remember that time when?" And you really didn't remember it. It wasn't part of what you think about all the time.
Right.
As you got together at the All-Star game in Cleveland and the NBA celebrated the best 50 players of all time, did you have one of those times? Did you talk to anybody and suddenly remember a time in your life that you had forgotten?
Well, you know, I did talk to some people about a great many things, but most of them are dealing with stories like, you know, Billy Cunningham, who is a good friend of mine. I got Jerry Ward, who played 1 year with the 76ers, and so they were trying to make me remember a story that they lived over top of a deli, you know, and I used to come there, and I walked into their humble apartment, which was like really disgraceful.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, like a cot here and a cot there, and I said something like, "Well, I didn't know that white people live so badly," you know, and they kind of laughed, and we laughed, and they said that I went down, bought them some food, and brought it back upstairs, and I don't remember all that, except that we used to go down to the deli all the time and buy some stuff, but they try to make you remember those kind of things. But you're right, there are many, many things that have happened in my life that some people can remember that I really don't. Some of the stories are unbelievable that I hear, and they come back to me.
A lot of your daily life, there are intrusions, people asking for your time. You've probably gone through your life with people asking you for a million favors when they're offering to give you just a handful of things, if you know what I mean.
Right,
there's more taken. That's part of the deal.
Right.
But when you players got together and celebrated these years together, and I saw it when the Knicks did it with the Celtics in New York, there looked to be genuine love of the moment. I mean, like a real, this is great, a real thanks NBA, whoever did this, really thanks.
Well, I think it was genuine, and that's what makes it really special. And most of these guys, you don't get a chance to see them, you know, in your daily routine of life. Some of them you do. But the thing is that it always is strange to me is that no matter how bitter foes you were, you know, when you're off the court, and especially now, it's like, you know, it's like a love affair. I mean, it really is, because we all shared the same type of feeling, and we did the same thing, and it's all part of our lives. And so when we see each other, we know we have empathy for each other and love for each other, and we know when we look at each other what we're all about. What we had to go through, what we had to live through, and the hardships, the joy, and so on and so forth. And we all kind of embody that, and when we see each other, it's like one happy family that did the same thing.
He's got the Overbrook high school jacket on.
Yeah,
City champs.
Yeah, cross country, you see cross country and track and field, and you're right, city champs. I hate to kind of put those years.
You were a distance runner?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We are just getting started with Wilt Chamberlain, the one and only here on Classic Sports.
Trying to happen.
And the stars he discovered.
Who was your favorite of all those?
O'Neal, Schaap, one-on-one, Monday at 6:30, only on ESPN Classic. This is ESPN Classic.
We left you with the thoughts of the greatest 50 players of all time in the NBA getting together, and you, when I read it in the newspaper, I said, this can't be. You're meeting Michael Jordan for the first time?
Can you imagine that? Yeah.
I understand Michael was, at least from what I read, there was a moment of sort of human hesitation as the two of you came together. Did you sense anything?
Yeah. Well, he was over there doing something, and I walked over to him. Maybe I surprised him a little bit, you know, being big and intimidating.
Yes, you could do that to a person.
Yeah. So I just kind of wrapped my arms around him and talked to him for a second or two. But it is amazing because the man's been playing now for 11, years. Been out there for 12 years. But on his off time, he plays golf, avoiding the sand traps. I'm in the sand. I'm a volleyball player. I spent all my time trying to get into the sand traps. So we just, socially, we just never had a chance to really meet, and I've only seen very few games since I've retired live. I watch tons and tons of games every day and night by satellite and on my TV thing. So, not surprisingly, I was always looking forward to watching him play one time, and I'm still waiting for my first time to truly watch him play. I watched him in the All-Star game, but that's something different.
If the two of you were in a room together, if the situation was such you have a bottle of wine, some sort of very cordial situation, where do you think your conversation would focus, the two of you?
Well, you know, first, you know, and I don't think we talk about basketball that much, you know. What I would like to know from him, because my life is so different than his, how he has to deal and what he has to deal with in just being a person and trying to avoid all the things that he must have to try to avoid. See, I am so intimidating that I have no entourages, I have no bodyguards, I have none of the things that people of the day seem to have a great many of, you know, and I don't know how it would be to live that way.
I mean, he's at a different level of celebrity, isn't he? Only because of the different kinds of media exposure that he's been given. So that's what...
But even that, so people can take that to different things. Otherwise, I know Bruce Springsteen. He goes and works out in the gyms I work on and so forth and so he's by himself. You understand? Whereas maybe another rock star or another singing star or whatever may have an entourage of people around him all the time. Some people feel comfortable with some buffer. And the buffer is usually people between them and their fans and the media or whatever. And other people don't feel comfortable with that. I remember going to Atlantic City a few years ago, and I was being like really besieged upon by a lot of people. And they said, "Look, we'll put three or four guards around you." I said, 3 or 4 guards? Are you kidding me? I mean, don't do that. I mean, I'd feel uncomfortable with that type of a situation.
It was a great photograph of the eras of Lakers centers. So it was you, and it was Kareem, and it was Shaquille O'Neal. Talk to me about the interaction you had with Shaquille that day and what you learned about him as one of the modern...
Well, you know, I wasn't really a part of that so much as it was we did a Reebok ad, which I was, I'm not Reebok, but he was, and we had all the centers there talking, and he was like he's very young. And I don't think that he has maybe a sense of, you know, of what he's all about yet and what we were all about. See, remember, Al, a lot of guys don't quite follow the sport as we did or as you may have, and they don't really know what certain people have done in the sport.
Exactly. They don't know the history.
Yeah, they don't really know the history, so they're not really maybe...
Oh, he once said of Lenny Wilkens, did he play?
Yeah, well, see, that's what I'm trying to say. I mean, I'm a history buff, and I find that rather unbelievable. That if I didn't know, I would maybe ask somebody else. You know, you know, but that's not important to a lot of them. They're doing so many other things. I can start to tell you the ownerships of the teams that I played against, you understand, back that, you know, in the 50s and all the way back to 46 when it first started. Because, I mean, like, this is my life and this is what I'm doing, and I was involved in basketball and watching it and watching the great ones from day one. Now, remember all the things that he's involved in, whether it be rap, you know, rap singing and, you know, all the movies and all this. He doesn't really have time. But what was he doing when he was in high school? I mean, who was he looking up to? Maybe Dr. J, or so maybe never went down to the history. You know, history is bad news for a lot of young people. They don't like history, and it doesn't seem to have anything to do with their lives.
Stories go that the doctors told him not to travel because of his knee injury, and he was not part of that great celebration of the 50 players, and he was booed. Should he, at any cost, have been part of that? Should he have taken a train? Should he have done whatever possible to be part of that?
Without a doubt. You know, I don't know how bad he was hurt, and I'm sure I can't speak for that, but I don't see where his knee could have kept him from taking a plane ride to be a part of something. I thought that was a direct slap in the face of all of us. The other 49 or 48 players who were there, you know, being representative. I would think that maybe a little later in life, 10 years, 20 years down the road,
regret it.
He's going to regret that, yes.
My new book shows you 15,000 government programs you could use to change your life, too. You can get a better job, get an education, or start your own business. Next year, the government's going to spend $350 billion, and those who know about the programs are the ones who get the money.
If I could get $15,000 to go back to school, any woman could do it.
This is ESPN Classic.
As a kid coming out of college and starting to play with Wilt, it was just amazing. You know, and to this day when I'm around him, I just can't believe the size of the man. He's 60 years old, and he looks like he still could play basketball.
It's got to be great to hear your contemporaries talk with such great respect. But let's deal with Billy Cunningham's observation there. Do you think, in a limited role, and this was talked about not too long ago, that you could come back and compete and contribute in today's NBA?
Well, they talked about it there at the weekend, you know, that a lot of reporters thought I could come back and play. And, you know, it has nothing to do with ego. First of all, what Billy is saying is I have a great deal of respect for what he was saying, except that when they're around me, they don't talk to me like that.
They always do that behind your back.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they're behind my back. But I like to believe I'm still very active in sports. I play a lot of racquetball and volleyball and paddle tennis and all these things. And I would think that in a limited role, if Alton Lister can come back for the Boston Celtics and play, when he's supposed to have a bad knee and bad this, yes, I can come back in a limited role. Yes, I really, really could. And the way I see some of these guys shooting foul shots, maybe I'll be the designated foul shooter.
Now, we'll talk about that in a different. You've written a book here, Who's Running the Asylum? Inside the Insane World of Sports Today. And it covers a lot of things that basically tell the story of sports being in a sad state of affairs.
Right.
As you talk about guys who can't shoot free throws and so on forth and on and on and on, what is the root of all the problem in sports as you see it today?
Well, in professional sports, for one, for sure, is the fact that they've been so successful, and the commissioners helped that to happen, and the athletes themselves have happened along in such a way that they've become showmen about what they're doing, and the fans have accepted that showmanship that they're able to do so splendidly. It's almost like the Harlem Globetrotters playing professional basketball, and that's what they've learned to do so well. But unfortunately, the dilution of the league has really made things to a point where the media and the fans have to now accept mediocrity. And that's really kind of a shame, because I think that we have a lot of talent out there, but maybe not enough for 29 and 30 teams. So that dilution has forced us to watch a lot of very, very mediocre to bad teams, and only very few very good teams, only one great team, the Bulls.
Right.
And so, like, who wants to watch the Bulls play? You know? There's so many ads out there right now. The question I'm asked all the time is, well, what about, you know, the NBA rating the high schools? They're not rating the high schools, but the question that should be asked is, has the NBA come down to the high school level?
Yeah, if a high school kid can come in and play in the NBA, what does that say?
What does that say? What does that say?
When you came out of high school, could you have played in that version of the NBA?
You know, I think probably so, only because I grew up playing against the greats of that time. Even in the NBA, I played against Neil Johnson up at Kutcher's Country Club. He used to be up there, and I played against a lot of pros, even when I was very, very young. And growing up in Philadelphia, where they had the greatest basketball players, along with New York City in the world, I was brought up in the mainstream of great, great basketball. So I was drafted, as you know, out of high school by the Philadelphia Warriors. It was a territorial draft, and the owner, Eddie Gottlieb, thought I was maybe going to somewhere else, and so he wanted to make sure that he got me. So in '55, I was drafted out of high school. I probably could have